Hello everybody, welcome to Edy Hurst's podcast version of The War of the Worlds. Welcome back. Man, it feels so great. It's been a long time coming, and here we are. Chapter 7, The Man on Putney Hill. Thank you so much for waiting, everyone, and for those of you who have just come to this podcast there hasn't been any wait. What are you talking about? This has been completely consistent, and there hasn't absolutely been a global pandemic, a return to work, or anything similar to that might have put an impact on the production of this podcast. That's insane to suggest that. Are you okay? Join me in saying, are you okay? If you are starting at this chapter, oh boy, you're into the second series and you're over halfway through that bit. We're entering the final section of the War of the Worlds. We're in the last few chapters now, and it feels great to be here doing it for you guys. And let me tell you, this chapter, it's a whopper. This may actually be the longest episode that we do, which I hope kind of goes some way to explaining why it's taken so long to make it. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to everybody who's come along to see my live show so far. It's mad that they're out and in the world. Edy Hurst's comedy version of Jeff Wayne's musical version of H.G. Wells' literary version, Viral Orson Welles' radio version, and Steven Spielberg's film version of The War of the Worlds, which of course is the live accompaniment to this podcast, or the podcast is the audio accompaniment. Make a choice which way you want that to happen. I had an amazing show in Leicester. Some people came from Manchester, which is where I am from. We could have shared a car, which is amazing, and I know other people travelled from really far afield, so thank you so much for all of you for visiting for that. We've also got some more shows coming up on the 16th of April at the Museum of Comedy in London. That's like across the road from the British Museum. I don't know why that's significant. It is to me. It's important to me, apparently. And also, I've got some in Brighton. I'm going to be in Brighton at Electric Arcade on the 4th, 5th and 6th of June. I'm waiting on Buxton Fringe stuff to come back if you're looking for something more Northwest way. And also, I will be in the Edinburgh Fringe, 16th to 24th of August. A whole week of Edy Hurst giving War of the Worlds nonsense at the Mash House. Famous venue. It was the venue I was at last time. I'm in a different room that I think will suit much better. So please do come along, especially if you can, to the London one, which is much sooner and also had to get postponed because I got COVID. And let me tell you, I maybe this is a controversial opinion, but I'm against it. I think it's awful. Terrible virus. Not keen on that one. Of all the invisible tiny life on our planet, that one can absolutely get in the bin. So that's 16th of April, Saturday, 7 p.m. Please come along. Anyway, back into the podcast proper. So this chapter, I thought as a way to catch us all up, it might be useful for me to crunch some numbers to show how Earth's doing against the Martians so far. So here we go. Narrators. 1.5 if you include the bit where he started talking about what his brother said to him. Martian cylinders that have arrived. 10. Martians in there arrived. 40. Martians that have been killed by humans. 3 to 4 at a push, but it was also kind of an accident. Humans that have been killed by Martians. That's sad. Let's not do that. Days overall that have passed so far. 16. Dogs that have been attempted to be eaten by the narrator. 1. Okay. And of course, I think the most important number here for you guys is bikes learnt to ride. Still 0. Still a big 0. Alright, so I think we're up to speed there. Is there anything else to say? Yeah, this chapter sees a fond return of a fan favourite. Has he changed? I mean, you would in a Martian invasion, to be fair. We also have a guest on this show, which I'm really excited about. It's Jack Evans, who has the fantastic podcast Mandatory Redistribution Party and does all sorts of alternative comedy stuff in Manchester, including the Jane Edwards Show, which he's great. I'd recommend you getting involved. That's why I invited him onto the podcast. And here we talk about, as he is a big old sci-fi head, a lot of dystopian futures and what his ideal one would be, which he thinks are actually alright when you consider it, and which ones are pretty terrible, even if you consider you could throw a Nintendo Switch into it. So, let's get involved in it. Please do like, subscribe, follow the podcast on whatever there is. You can follow me on Twitter at Edy Hurst. I'm on Instagram at Edy Hurst. It's Edy Hurst, and also Facebook there. Check out tickets for everything, and I'll see you at the end. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Chapter 7. The Man on Putney Hill.
I spent that night in the inn that stands at the top of Putney Hill, sleeping in a made bed for the first time since my flight to Leatherhead. I will not tell the needless trouble I had breaking into that house. Afterwards I found the front door was just on the latch.
cheeky bit of observational comedy in it. You know, when you're trying to open a door and it turns out just to try the old handle. Let's boot up a little sound effect to celebrate. Beautiful.
Nor how I ransacked every room for food, until just on the verge of despair, in what seemed to me like a servant's bedroom, I found a rat-gnawed crust and 2 tins of pineapple.
Jackpot!
Mind you, I mean, outside of the rat-gnawed bread, 2 tins of pineapple does sound like a pretty standard prize on a tombola, right?
The place had already been searched and emptied. In the bar, I afterwards found some biscuits and sandwiches that had been overlooked. The latter I could not eat. They were too rotten. But the former not only stayed my hunger, but filled my pockets. I lit no lamps, fearing some Martian might come beating that part of London for food in the night. Before I went to bed, I had an interval of restlessness, and prowled from window to window, peering out for some sign of these monsters. I slept little. As I lay in bed, I found myself thinking consecutively, a thing I do not remember to have done since my last argument with the curate. During all the intervening time, my mental condition had been a hurrying succession of vague emotional states, or a sort of stupid receptivity. But in the night, my brain, reinforced, I suppose, by the food I had eaten, grew clear again. And I thought...
Reckon he's going to think about all them dogs and cats he tried to eat on the way here? Maybe. Who knows? I mean, sometimes when you get hangry, you do think mad thoughts. So, let's see if he's going to go into it. Imagine that this chapter is just him going like, why did I try to eat that dog? The man on Putney Hill, has a good think about his intrusive thoughts from before, even though he was kind of dealing with trauma, so even though we're kind of judging him in the light of day, maybe he's going through something that we can't comprehend. I don't know. Let's find out anyway.
3 things struggled for possession of my mind. The killing of the curate, the whereabouts of the Martians, and the possible fate of my wife.
Yeah, absolutely. That's your third priority there. Your wife. Yeah, sure. That's not a surprise at this point, is it?
The former gave me no sensation of horror or remorse to recall. I saw it simply as a thing done. A memory infinitely disagreeable, but quite without the quality of remorse. I saw myself then as I see myself now, driven step by step towards that hasty blow, the creature of a sequence of accidents leading inevitably to that.
I don't know if anyone's noticed, it's a little Easter egg I've been doing for myself in the deep dives and stuff, where I like to drop a little quote from sci-fi writer Kurt Vonnegut's works into some of the bits I've been doing. If you listen through, you'll see there's maybe 5, 6, I think maybe even 7. Whoa, 7? You're kidding me. Possibly. Throughout it. But now we've finally come full circle, and I think H.G. Wells has actually put his own little reference to Kurt Vonnegut in here. This sounds a lot like the famous quote from Sirens of Titan, which I'll let the song by Al Stewart say.
I was the victim of a series of accidents. As are we all.
Because this is a thing that rock stars used to do back in the day. They'd write a song about a book they liked, which I love. You know, you get Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights. It's unlikely that you're going to get Harry Styles' Little Women coming out anytime soon. But, you know, Harry, if you are a listener, you know, the option's there. Why not do it? But keep away from War of the Worlds, all right?
I felt no condemnation. Yet the memory, static, unprogressive, haunted me. In the silence of the night, with that sense of the nearness of God that sometimes comes into the stillness and the darkness, I stood my trial. My only trial, for that moment of wrath and fear. I retraced every step of our conversation from the moment when I had found him crouching beside me, heedless of my thirst, and pointing to the fire and smoke that steamed up from the ruins of Weybridge. We had been incapable of cooperation. Grim chance had taken no heed of that. Had I foreseen, I should have left him in Halliford. But I did not foresee, and crime is to foresee and do. And I set this down as I have set all this story down. As it was. There were no witnesses. All these things I might have concealed. But I set it down, and the reader must form his judgment as he will.
I mean, the thought hadn't really occurred to me until now, but do you reckon the narrator actually killed the curate? Right, like, he's
he's talking about like, oh, I didn't have to write all this down. I didn't have to put all this long-winded explanation of how he died down, but I have, and I think you'll find that you will judge me fairly for that. It sounds like he murdered him and he's making it up now, right? That's not just me. Maybe I've been spending too much time with him, but I think there's something wrong here. He's started to interfere with animals, and he's the one person that he spent any amount of time with, has died in circumstances that only he can relate to us. I mean, nobody even asked him, did he die? He could have just said, oh no, I left him alone for weeks. But no, he mentioned, no, he definitely died near me, so if you find any fingerprints on him, they might be mine, because we did have a little bit of a fight, we did have a little bit of a tussle, but I did not kill him. I didn't kill, he fell into the Martian's hands, not on the blade that I was holding, but I did hit him quite a lot, so if he's alive and he says I tried to kill him, I did not, but the Martians tried to kill him, it was the Martians. That's what it feels like to me a little bit, at least.
And when, by an effort, I had set aside that picture of a prostate body, I faced the problem of the Martians and the fate of my wife. For the former, I had no data. I could imagine 100 things, and so, unhappily, I could for the latter. And suddenly, that night became terrible.
It was going so great before now. He'd found a half-eaten sandwich, some gone-off biscuits, 2 tins of pineapple. He'd remembered he'd murdered a guy. Oh, now this is what tips it over. Poor lad.
I found myself sitting up in bed, staring at the dark. I found myself praying that the heat ray might have suddenly and painlessly struck her out of being. Since the night of my return from Leatherhead, I had not prayed. I had uttered prayers. Fetish prayers. Had prayed as heathens muttered charms when I was in extremity. But now I prayed indeed, pleading steadfastly and sanely, face to face with the darkness of God. Strange night! Strangest in this, that so soon as dawn had come, I, who had talked with God, crept out of the house like a rat leaving its hiding place, a creature scarcely larger, an inferior animal, a thing that for any passing whim of our masters might be hunted and killed.
Absolutely classic Englishman attitude there. These Martians haven't been here a month, and already he's like, "Ooh, our masters, the Martians, please don't kill me like a dirty rat, ooh." Also, for that fetish prayer bit, because I know it's hanging there, innit? We need to mention it. I can't find the explaining lad anywhere, so I kind of don't want to alarm him, because he feels like he's been going through quite a lot recently. So a fetish, it means as in like a sort of inanimate object that people worship, like a sort of idol, like an idol, as in don't worship false idols, that sort of thing. So I think that's what he means when he says fetish prayers. It's like he's praying to a false thing. It's just within that moment he's saying like, wish things weren't like that, rather than like I fundamentally need to address what's going on. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Anyway, back to the book.
Perhaps they also prayed confidently to God. Surely, if we have learned nothing else, this war has taught us pity. Pity for those witless souls that suffer our dominion.
Just a heads up, if anyone, for reasons absolutely beyond me, are using this as a way to try and skip out on reading this book for GCSE or book reports or whatever, chuck that in. Chuck that in, I reckon that's going to be pretty good. Pity those witless souls that suffer our dominion. It comes up in the book a bit, doesn't it? Anytime he talks about animals, it's kind of like, the Martians are mean to us, but maybe we're mean to people too. And why don't you think about that? That's what I imagine he's saying, in that exact accent.
The morning was bright and fine, and the eastern sky glowed pink, and was fretted with little golden clouds. In the road that runs from the top of Putney Hill to Wimbledon was a number of poor vestiges of the panic torrent that must have poured Londonward on the Sunday night after the fighting began. There was a little two-wheeled cart inscribed with the name of Thomas Lobb, greengrocer, New Malden, with a smashed wheel and an abandoned tin truck. There was a straw hat trampled into the now hardened mud, and at the top of West Hill a lot of blood-stained glass about the overturned water trough.
Real name alert! I'm really getting my money's worth out of that big alarm I bought for this episode. Look, we know H.G. Wells at this point. If he's given somebody a full name, what's going on there? Like, he barely gives him even a first name. So I thought, Thomas Lobb, who's that? It turns out he wasn't a greengrocer, he was a botanist in the 1840s who died in 1894, and he gathered plants for the nurseries of a place called Veitch. So he was like an academic, so it makes sense that H.G. Wells would have at least studied him in some way, being a biologist. A little tip of the hat there, so there you go. You know, like in video games sometimes, or in films, you get like little references to other films. That's what this is, but instead of like a film that's coming out, it's just a botanist. Just a botanist hiding there on the little smashed cart.
My movements were languid, my plans of the vaguest. I had an idea of going to Leatherhead, though I certainly knew that there I had the poorest chance of finding my wife. Certainly, unless death had overtaken them suddenly, my cousins and she would have fled thence. But it seemed to me I might find or learn there whither the Surrey people had fled. I knew I wanted to find my wife, that my heart ached for her and the world of men.
He couldn't even last a whole sentence of just saying he loved his wife. He couldn't do it. He was trying his best. He's like, oh, I ache for my wife. And other humans also.
But I had no clear idea of how the finding might be done. I was also sharply aware now of my intense loneliness. From the corner I went, under cover of a thicket of trees and bushes, to the edge of Wimbledon Common, stretching wide and far.
Underground, overground, round the red weed. The narrator's in Wimbledon Common, sadly, trying to watch out for Martian tripod signs, just being glad that his wife's left behind.
No, I don't care for it. It's sweating. No, let's call it. Let's mark this one up as a failure. We'll make a joke about tennis or something instead.
That dark expanse was lit in patches by yellow gorse and broom. There was no red weed to be seen, and as I prowled, hesitatingly, on the verge of the open, the sun rose, flooding it all with light and vitality. I came upon a busy swarm of little frogs in a swampy place among the trees. I stopped to look at them, drawing a lesson from their stout resolve to live, and presently, turning suddenly, with an odd feeling of being watched, I beheld something crouching amid a clump of bushes. I stood regarding this.
I say, hello there, bushes. Good to see you. Kind regards. Regards of the season. I'm ever so lonely.
I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a man armed with a cutlass.
Like, I know a cutlass probably at that time was like a standard weapon, but all I can think about is that this is a pirate, and we're getting a pirate crossover, and there's going to be a pirate in War of the Worlds, and so there's like pirates, and maybe they steal tripods or something. I don't know, I'm really excited.
I approached him slowly. He stood silent and motionless, regarding me.
Yo ho, my hearty. Kind regards. Regards of the season. I'm ever so lonely.
As I drew nearer, I perceived he was dressed in clothes as dusty and filthy as my own. He looked, indeed, as though he had been dragged through a culvert.
Hey everybody, it's me, the explaining lad. I'm back. That's what is going to be the little theme tune for me. I'm fine, thank you for asking me. Some of you might be like, but you seemed so distraught before. And my answer is, well, progression in healing is not a single line. It's cyclical. And today, as what feels like being a metaphysical figure who has a lot more mythology than we probably started out in the podcast expecting, it's a good day. Anyway, we're here to talk about culverts. A culvert it's a tunnel that usually goes over like a road or a train, and it has steam in, or like sewage or water or just some gunk, nasty gunk. So when you see that this pirate that I sure we're all excited to hear more about, you know, was he on the Thunderchild? Like he got on there as a stowaway? I don't know. I'll save that for later. When he gets pulled through, it's like he's being pulled through a poo pipe. So it makes a little more, it's a bit of a dig, really. Anyway, it's not my job to judge it. I'm just here to explain. Sayonara!
Nearer, I distinguished the green slime of ditches, mixing with the pale drab of dried clay and shiny, coaly patches. His black hair fell over his eyes, and his face was dark and dirty and sunken, so that at first I did not recognize him. There was a red cut across the lower part of his face.
Stop!
He cried when I was within 10 yards of him, and I stopped. His voice was hoarse.
Where do you come from?
He said.
I'm just going to say it now, it is going to be me doing the voice of the artilleryman as well. It's a lot of lines in this chapter that he goes through, and quite frankly, I'm going to have my best old bash at David Essex's voice that he does in War of the Worlds. Is it going to be better than Ricky Wilson's in the new one? Maybe. But seriously, this might be the one time that I don't want to know in comments or messages what you think of it.
I thought, surveying him.
I come from Mortlake,
I said.
I was buried near the pit the Martians made about their cylinder. I have worked my way out and escaped. There is no food about here,
he said.
This is my country. All this hill down to the river and back to Clapham, and up to the edge of the common. There is only food for one. Which way are you going?
I mean, clearly this is a sort of Cockney accent, isn't it? That's what David Essex has. He's a guy from the East End, so that's a... But then Essex, like, is the last name, like a stage name, and that's the northeast. That's not in London. That's out of it. So, I mean, look. There's a lot of decisions that were made in this voice, and I've picked a lane, and I'm not leaving it.
I answered slowly.
I don't know,
I said.
I have been buried in the ruins of a house 13 or 14 days. I don't know what has happened.
He looked at me doubtfully, then stared, and looked with a changed expression.
I've no wish to stop about here,
said I.
I think I shall go to Leatherhead, for my wife was there.
He shot out a pointing finger.
It is you,
said he.
The man from Woking. And you weren't killed in Weybridge.
I recognised him at that moment.
You are the artilleryman who came into my garden.
What? It's like a returning character in a sitcom, isn't it? Who was expecting this guy? Of everyone, he was the only person who at any point thought, I should probably look for some biscuits in a building before I leave it. So, you know what? Odds are on that he's going to be the survivor.
Good luck,
he said.
We are the lucky ones. Fancy you.
He put out a hand, and I took it.
I crawled up a drain,
he said.
But they didn't kill everyone. And after they went away, I got off towards Walton across the fields. But it's not 16 days altogether, and your hair is grey.
He looked over his shoulder suddenly.
Only a rook,
he said.
One gets to know that birds have shadows these days. This is a bit open. Let's crawl under those bushes and talk.
I mean, this is great. He said his wife's probably dead. He said he can't believe that he survived. He's told him that he's aged awfully in less than 15 days, and now he's suggested that they both go and hide under the bushes together. I can't read this guy. Is he negging him? What's going on here?
Have you seen any Martians?
I said.
Since I crawled out, they've gone away across London,
he said.
I guess they've got a bigger camp there. Overnight, all over there, Hampstead way. The sky is alive with their lights. It's like a great city, and in the glare you can just see them moving. By daylight you can't. But nearer, I haven't seen them.
He counted on his fingers.
5 days. Then I saw a couple across Hammersmith Way, carrying something big. And the night before last...
He stopped and spoke impressively.
It was just a matter of lights. But it was something in the air. I believe they built a flying machine, and are learning to fly.
I stopped, on hands and knees, for we had come to the bushes.
Fly? Yes,
he said.
Fly.
I went on into a little bower and sat down.
Oi, it's me again, the explaining lad. I'm feeling great. I've been for a run, I had a good sleep, and all of my issues have been cured. I don't need any additional support at all. Thank you for asking, though. I don't know why you'd ask. There's such a weird thing for you. A bower, it's a little attractive dwelling or retreat that's made from tree vines or like tree boughs, you know, like the branches and stuff. It's just a little, like a tree house, that sort of thing. Anyway, the sort of place that you'd have a great rest, a little bit of, I don't know, mindfulness, and just take your mind off the fact that perhaps you are a metaphysical entity that is made over and over again and crushed and rebirthed.
It is all over with humanity,
I said.
If they can do that, they will simply go round the world.
He nodded.
They will. But it will relieve things over here a bit. And besides,
He looked at me.
aren't you satisfied it is up with humanity? I am. We're down. We're beat.
I stared. Strange as it may seem, I had not arrived at this fact. A fact perfectly obvious so soon as he spoke. I had still held a vague hope. Rather, I had kept a lifelong habit of mind. He repeated his words.
We're beat.
They carried absolute conviction.
It's all over.
He said.
They've lost one. Just one. And they've made their footing good and crippled the greatest power in the world. They've walked all over us. The death of that one at Weybridge was an accident. And these are only pioneers. They kept on coming. These green stars. I've seen none these 5 or 6 days, but I've no doubt they're falling somewhere every night. Nothing's to be done. We're under. We're beat.
These are the 4 hugely talented gentlemen performing, nominated for Best Performance by a Leading Actor in a Play. They are Brian Bedford, for his brilliant performance in the Molière comedies. Ralph Fiennes, who may be the most unique Hamlet ever to have turned up on Broadway. Roger Rees, and
Edy Hurst.
for his multiple comic roles in a...
Edy Hurst podcast version of The War of the World.
And the winner of the 1990 Tony Award for leading actor in a
Podcast
is...
Edy Hurst. I made him no answer. I sat staring before me, trying in vain to devise some countervailing thought.
Great idea, narrator. That's exactly what this man who's clearly on edge needs. What he needs in this scenario is the devil's advocate, somebody to disagree with him. Perfect. I'm sure that's really going to calm him down.
This isn't a war,
said the artilleryman.
It was never a war, any more than there's a war between man and ants.
Suddenly I recalled the night in the observatory.
After the 10th shot, they fired no more. At least until the first cylinder came. How do you know? Said the artilleryman.
I explained. He thought.
Something wrong with the gun,
he said.
But what if there is? They'll get it right again. And even if there's a delay, how can it alter the end? It's just men and ants. There's the ants. Builds their cities, live their lives, have wars, revolutions, until the men want them out of the way, and then they go out of the way. That's what we are now. Just ants. Only, yes,
I said.
we're eatable ants.
Well, clearly somebody didn't read the 2030 report on future protein sources by the EU, or they'd know very well that ants are also eatable ants. Gonna be eating bugs. Eating bugs. So now who's the idiot? Excuse me while I just grab a few more slugs.
We sat looking at each other.
And what will they do with us?
I said.
That's what I've been thinking.
He said.
That's what I've been thinking. After Weybridge, I went south. Thinking. I saw what was up. Most of the people were hard at it, squealing and exciting themselves. But I'm not so fond of squealing. I've been in the sight of death once or twice. I'm not an ornamental soldier. And at the best and worst, death. It's just death. And it's the man that keeps on thinking comes through. I saw everybody tracking away south. Says I, fate won't last this way. And I turned right back. I went for the Martians like a sparrow goes for man. All around.
He waved a hand to the horizon.
They're starving in heaps, bolting, treading on each other.
He saw my face and halted awkwardly.
No doubt lots who have had money gone away to France,
he said. He seemed to hesitate whether to apologise, met my eyes and went on.
There's food all about here. Canned things in shops, wines, spirits, mineral waters. And the water mains and the drains are empty. Well, I was telling you what I was thinking. Here's intelligent things, I said. And it seems they want us for food. First, they'll smash us up. Ships, machines, guns, cities, all the order and organisation. All that will go. If we were the size of ants, we might pull through. But we're not. It's all too bulky to stop. That's the first certainty. Eh?
I assented.
It is. I've thought it all out. Very well. Then, next, at present, we're caught as we're wanted. A Martian has only to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. And I saw one day, out by Wandsworth, picking houses to pieces and rooting among the wreckage. But they won't keep on doing that. So soon as they've settled all our guns and ships, and smashed our railways, and done all the things they are doing over there, they will begin catching us systematically, picking the best and storing us in cages and things. That's what they'll start doing in a bit. Lord, they haven't begun on us yet. Don't you see that? Not begun?
I exclaimed.
Not begun. All that's happened so far is through our not having the sense to keep quiet, worrying them with guns and such foolery, and losing our heads, and rushing off in crowds to where there wasn't any more safety than where we were. They don't want to bother us yet. They're making their things. Making all the things they couldn't bring with them. Getting things ready for the rest of their people. Very likely that's why the cylinders have stopped for a bit, for fear of hitting those who are here. And instead of our rushing about blind, on the howl, or getting dynamite on the chance of busting them up, we've got to fix ourselves up according to the new state of affairs. That's how I figure it out. It isn't quite according to what man wants for his species, but it's about what the facts point to. And that's the principle I acted upon. Cities, nations, civilization, progress, it's all over. The game's up. We're beat. But if that is so, what is there to live for?
The artilleryman looked at me for a moment.
There won't be any more blessed concerts for 1,000,000 years or so. There won't be any Royal Academy of Arts and no nice little feeds at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I reckon the game is up. If you've got any drawing room manners or a dislike to eating peas with a knife or dropping H's, you better chuck 'em away. There ain't no further use.
You hear that? You're gonna be eating peas with a knife for the rest of your life, you little shit, and you're gonna like it.
You mean? I mean that men like me are going on living for the sake of the breed. I tell you, I'm grim set on living. And if I'm not mistaken, you'll show what's inside you've got too before long. We aren't going to be exterminated, and I don't mean to be caught either, and tamed and fattened and bred like a thundering ox. Oh, fancy those brown creepers.
Look, I'm not saying that I want to be fattened and bred, but I am saying it'd be pretty cool to be a thundering ox, right? It's like, like when Zeus in mythology turns into a bull. That's literally that, a thundering ox. That's pretty good. That's all, I'm not saying that I want the Martians to invade and turn humans into farm animals, but all I'm saying is behind every cloud, potentially a thundering ox.
You don't mean to say? I do. I'm going on. Under their feet. I've got it planned. I've thought it out. We men are beat. We don't know enough. We've got to learn before we've got a chance. And we've got to live and keep independent while we learn. See? That's what has to be done.
I stared, astonished, and stirred profoundly by the man's resolution.
Great God!
Cried I.
But you are a man indeed.
And suddenly I gripped his hand.
Please let me be your underground mole wife, artilleryman.
Hey,
he said, with his eyes shining.
I've thought it out, eh? Go on,
I said.
Well, those who mean to escape their catching must get ready. I'm getting ready. Mind you, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. I had my doubts. You're slender. I didn't know that it was you see, or just how you'd been buried. Oh, the sort of people who lived in these houses. All those damn little clerks that used to live down that way. They'd be no good.
Has the artilleryman read the game or something? He's doing a lot of fat shaming, slagging off what sounds like the social background that the narrator's from, in a real sort of like, oh, you're alright, but I don't like them. Textbook negging. I'm actually starting to feel sorry for the guy now. I think he's getting into a bit of a toxic relationship here. Oh well.
They haven't any spirit in them. No proud dreams and no proud lusts. And a man who hasn't one or the other, Lord, What is he but funk and precautions? They just used to skedaddle off to work. I've seen hundreds of them, bit of breakfast in hand, running wild and shining to catch their season ticket train for fear they'd get dismissed if they didn't. Working at businesses they were afraid to take the trouble to understand, skedaddling back for fear they wouldn't be in time for dinner, keeping indoors after dinner for fear of the back streets, and sleeping with the wives they married, not because they wanted them, but because he had a bit of money that would make for safety in their one little miserable skedaddle through the world. Lives insured and a bit invested for fear of accidents.
I know this isn't the takeaway from this speech that he's making, but he's really pumping the gas on the word skedaddle here, isn't he? It feels like, has he got royalties on that? Is that like his new plan? His nation's going to be skedaddle or something? Maybe H.G. Wells, that was like his word of the day when he was writing the chapter? I don't know.
And on Sundays, fear of the hereafter, as if hell was built for rabbits. Well, the Martians will just be a godsend to these. Nice roomy cages, fattening food, careful breeding, no worry. After a week or so chasing about the fields and lands on empty stomachs, they'll come and be caught cheerfully. They'll be quite glad after a bit. They'll wonder what people did before there were Martians to take care of them. And the bar loafers and mashers and singers, I can imagine them,
he said, with a sort of sombre gratification.
As both a bar loafer and a singer, maybe a masher, I don't know what that is. Let me have a look. It's sort of like a fashionable man, a bit like a dandy, that sort of equivalent. I'm not one of them, but anyway, I'm offended. You know, say what you like about the people who skedaddle off with their season tickets and skedaddle back home and don't want to go out because of back streets at night. But you know, when you come for the loafers and the singers, that's when you've got me on the other side of the list, of the against list. So you better think twice, artillerymen, because I'm a very powerful enemy. I bet that's really shit 'em up.
There'll be any amount of sentiment and religion loose among them. There's hundreds of things I saw with my eyes that I've only begun to see clearly these last few days.
Now, that's a red flag in a red flag forest.
There's lots will take things as they are, fat and stupid. And lots will be worried by a sort of feeling that it's all wrong, and that they ought to be doing something. Now, whenever things are so that a lot of people feel they ought to be doing something, the weak, and those who go for weak with a lot of complicated thinking, always make some sort of do-nothing religion, very pious and superior, and submit to persecution and the will of the Lord. Very likely you've seen the same thing. It's energy in a gale of funk, and turned clean inside out. These cages will be full of psalms and hymns and piety, and those of a less simple sort will work in a bit of, eroticism.
I just wanted to drop in here and say a reminder, I guess, that this was a chapter that wasn't put into the monthly releases of this. This was a book-only chapter that H.G. Wells added in, and you can kind of see why, right? Like, he's slagging off religion, he's having a go at people with 9-to-5 jobs, the bar loafers, as we've already covered. He has no time for them through this sort of flawed, angry man. And I guess maybe this is a free rein way for him to sort of take a pop shop at society, but also it's interesting because if you look at H.G. Wells' life, he was never a particularly faithful man to his wives, which he had many of. He also had many secret lovers, which I'm sure in a later episode we'll go into deeper. So it just feels, you know, like it's not like he actually believes all the things he's saying here, but it definitely feels like he's working through some stuff. I'd like to take the opportunity on behalf of myself, and if I can be so bold, you, the listeners, to say, Herbert, you alright, mate? You alright, pal? We're here if you want to talk.
He paused.
Very likely these Martians will make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks. Who knows? Get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. And some, maybe, they will train to hunt us. No,
I cried.
That's impossible. No human being. What's the good of going on with such lies?
Said the artilleryman.
There's men who do it cheerfully. What nonsense to pretend there isn't.
And I succumbed to his conviction.
If they come after me,
he said,
Lord, if they come after me,
and subsided into a grim meditation. I sat contemplating these things. I could find nothing to bring against this man's reasoning. In the days before the invasion, no one would have questioned my intellectual superiority to his. I, a professed and recognised writer on philosophical themes, and he, a common soldier. And yet he had already formulated a situation that I had scarcely realised. "What are you doing?" I said presently. "What plans have you made?" He hesitated.
Oh, here we go. He's been asked for his homework. What's he got to show?
Well, it's like this, he said. What have we to do? We have to invent a sort of life where men can live and breed, and be sufficiently secure to bring the children up. Yes. Wait a bit, and I'll make it clearer what I think ought to be done.
Hello, Jack Evans. How are you doing?
Hello, Edy Hurst. I am doing okay for the sake of the audience of this podcast.
One of the reasons I wanted to invite you on and speak to you about is about dystopias and utopias. So this is the bit where the artilleryman is underground.
Yeah, he wants to live in the drains. He's like, we live in the drains because otherwise humanity's going to be wiped out. So we need to create a Morlock drain society.
Yeah. So I've sort of listed the bullet points of what the options and the offerings are from the artilleryman, and I've also put the options of what the Martians are offering from being captured and run by them. Because I think often the Martians get a short shrift in terms of... Because, so let's go for them first. So they land, there's a lot of red weed. Now, you can't eat red weed, but...
No. Do you need to?
No, you don't need to. Like, there's plenty of land. It does affect the water supply a bit, but not massively. Now, what they are doing is catching humans to eat. Or just to suck their blood. So actually, right, because this is the thing I reckon. They need to drink the blood, not good. Bad against that. However, unlike a book like Dracula, they don't they could just have some of the blood.
Or you could do it like the Matrix. Like, put everyone in like a VR situation and then just seep the blood out of them while they're in their little utopia.
But I don't even think they need to do that. I think there could be a fair deal brokered.
Yeah. A compromise with the conqueror. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so here's what the Martians are offering. So they've offered red weed. That looks interesting.
Okay.
They're nice roomy cages, accommodation for everyone. Fattening food. Hello.
Wow.
Don't have to pay for that.
Why are they giving you fattening food? Because they're going to eat you. They want to suck blood out of clogged arteries.
Apparently, they want cholesterol. That's actually what they're after.
Maybe they're making black pudding.
Well, they might. Careful breeding.
Oh, okay. So eugenics.
Psalms, hymns, and piety is described. That's what the artilleryman thinks they'll use to sort of make people accept the Martians. Is some hymns and that.
Oh, so he thinks they're going to use like the British Empire, like forcing everyone to be Christian style stuff.
And lastly, if you don't go in for the Psalms, hymns, and piety, eroticism.
Oh, okay, horny. Make it horny.
Make you horny.
Is that? Are you going to have sex with them, or are they?
I'm assuming it's between humans.
What are they going to do?
But it might be into
technical stuff,
into terrestrial,
interspecies. Maybe he's going for the blood thing, isn't he? To try to do like the colonial relationship is parasitic. So he doesn't want them to just eat them. He's saying like, he's sucking because he's trying to do. He could just have them do actual imperialism and make like plantations or exploit people. But he's gone for the body horror of the blood and also the parasitic relationship. You can see what he's doing clunkily.
Right, so that's the Martians. This is what the artilleryman's offering you. So the first thing is you're going to be eating peas with a knife. That's a big thing.
That's really hard. That's really difficult. Why not a spoon or a fork? Is this a selling point?
This is meant to be... This is him saying, like, it's going to be tough, but this is our future.
Oh, okay.
Dropping H's all over the place.
Right.
I think that's, like, just not saying them rather than, like... like I don't know if there's an H, like how just going around calling people hoes.
And this was written before the nuclear bomb existed, so it can't reference that.
So you're underground, but in London, so those prices probably going to keep their price of property.
Yeah, I bet those sewers are expensive.
Right.
People need sewers. Eventually, the Martians will need the sewers as well. Maybe if they want to start piping blood round en masse.
That's fair. Actually, yeah,
so
that's
you can
true.
then charge them rent.
Yeah. Seize the means of production.
Yeah, you got
of the blood.
Yeah, you're a sewer landlord, blood lord.
One of the big selling points, I think, is that he'll let you have a go on one of the Martian tripods.
He's got one.
Well, no, not yet. So his big aim is that they're gonna take one over and then have a go on it.
But then still stay in the sewers, stay in the subterranean area.
There's also, just to finish this off, there's learning, so you can learn from books and stuff.
Oh,
and cricket. So
that's a negative in my view, especially in the sewers. Slippy, dark, hard ball flying at you.
No.
You miss it. You got to pick it up out of the poop.
Mess. So which of those would you take?
I mean, if it is a binary choice, I'm going to have to be a sewer guy rather than a conquered blood donor.
Okay.
But I'm not going to be happy about it.
Okay.
What about you?
I don't know. I mean, well, not to ruin. I do have some insider trading that in about a week I'm going to be fine as a Martian captive. This is the game that I wanted to play with you. They say the future's going to be this. I say the future's going to be that. Which do you think is better than which? Have a go. It's the... So I thought I'd run past a few utopias with you and see what you think. Like whether you think they're better or worse than a Martian invasion and living in the sewers.
Okay, yeah, and we are basing it on the sewer choice.
But right, okay. So hypothetically, we'll get rid of the artilleryman and it's your sewers.
Right.
So like, say
okay.
you Jack, they've invaded Manchester, and you've gone down into the sewers, and a bunch of people have gone with you. It's like, you've got enough people. I'm not saying it's like loads, but you've got enough.
What skills have they got? Have they got like digging ability? Have we got that?
You've managed to get down in there. Maybe you can go up and get tools and things. You must have some people. Like you've not got specialists necessarily.
There are actually like secret nuclear shelters all under Manchester, which you could get in.
Right. So you could use them.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
So what would you do in your underground area?
Chill out. Wait for the Martians to all die.
Yeah.
But I don't know they're all going to die.
Yeah. I'd say like for the sake of this, we're going to put you in. You have as much knowledge as the artilleryman.
Okay. I would, priority 1, food. You got to sort your food out. Priority 2, heat.
Okay.
Priority 3, protection against rats, which could be easily linked to food.
Sure.
I don't know how you would cultivate food underground with no sun. That's my...
Yeah, that's a
Can you
fair
just
point.
like turn an electric light on above a plant and it'll photosynthesize?
Yeah, you can get certain lights, can't you? Like there are a lot of hydroponic places around Manchester that you could rent.
Yeah, okay. One of the guys who's with us is a hardcore drug guy and it's got like hydroponics. Yeah.
But if you consider, if you think like you're in maybe a 10-mile radius of where we live, and the people that you can get involved in that.
Yeah, someone's got hydroponics.
You're probably getting someone with
Someone's
hydroponics.
tooled up.
I mean, near where I live, there is a shop called Hydroponics, which sells it.
Which is just for growing your basil.
And nothing else, I'm sure.
Yeah. I bring Dodgy Paul down with me. He can be in charge of agriculture games room.
Nice.
But it'd have to be War of the Worlds era games.
No, you can do it now. You can do it
poker.
now. I'll let you have...
Oh, contemporary reboot. Nintendo Switch, Overcooked. Very stressful. But we only play, for morale, we only play against like, oh, actually, no, you don't want to get overcooked if it's for morale. You'll fucking hate each other. Maybe Yoshi's Crafted World.
In my head, your whole sewer system is just an overcooked level. Like that is what you meant.
Yeah, you got the hydroponics, you got the rat hunters, and you got to manage the people in the right area. And I'm in the middle shouting, "You have to do what I say, or it'll go fucked." Do you want to see the next level? It looks like it's in the clouds.
Clearly, like there's electricity. There's a standard of living that's probably comparable to 2020.
We never need to rise up against the Martians. We just chill in the shadows.
So I'm going to suggest some famous dystopian/utopian futures, because I'm a firm believer that any dystopian is a utopian for someone. It might
well, yeah,
it might be for only 3 people, but they're having a great time. So
yeah, we're living in Elon Musk's utopia right now, right?
You know,
exactly. Yeah,
and
okay.
I just hope that because if there is like a utilitarian measurement of happiness, maybe he's like so happy that it doesn't matter about the rest. You know what I mean? Like it cancels out. His happiness points are so high, and Jeff Bezos is so happy that the suffering doesn't matter.
Yeah. They're definitely not, though.
Look at the pharaohs. At no point do you look at a pyramid and go, the man who designed that is happy.
I love that. You know the early pyramids where they fucked up the angle and had to change? So they went up too steep and then had to change halfway through.
Oh, no, I didn't know this.
And then he made them... he made him build another one because he was so angry about it.
Shit.
So there's like I think it fell apart like the other ones, but there's like somewhere there's like a prototype fucked pyramid that doesn't even have everyone buried in it because the guy got so raging.
Here's the first utopian choice: Logan's Run.
Oh, with the
So Logan's Run, to give a brief synopsis. Logan's Run is a world where nobody lives over a certain age because they have a gem in their palm that if it flashes, you have to go and die. Yeah. But other than that, your resources are all there. It's never really discussed who's in control in that society.
It's never clarified because the film's more about Logan running, right?
Yeah,
he gets out of there. And then finds some very weird shit outside. Hardcore ageism. And you and I would probably be dead under Logan's Run rules.
Please.
So that's in a way that solves many problems. And yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say my Nintendo Switch sewer is probably better than Logan's Run.
This is a testament
on the ageism front. However, Logan's Run, I think if your gem hasn't gone off, is like pretty amazing, isn't it? Isn't it isn't it ultra leisure society? They kill off the old because they haven't got enough resources.
I think that's got to be it. That's the reasoning behind it. But also, what a testament to the entertainment value of the Switch.
Do you know what? As leader of my sewer society, I might implement Logan's Run. I might install a diamond in everyone and tweak it to just like overcooked ability instead of age. Like, I don't care if you're 70, if you're sick, if you're really efficient at running the hydroponics and rat management, you can stay.
Sure.
But if someone is like feeding the hydroponics food to the rats, then their diamond goes like red and they have to get fucked. That's my answer. Synthesis.
Okay. All right. 1984. Famous. I think when you think of dystopia, this is kind of where most people will first go. Would you rather have that, like the Big Brother brooding bureaucracy watching?
I want to live in the 1984 that exists in sort of centrist and right-wing people's minds, which is just a world free of racism and sexism. If you've never read 1984 and based it just on what pundits tweet about 1984 you would assume is like fantastic. Wow, I really wish I was in 1984. Unlike the real 1984 when Thatcher was at her peak, which was that was really bad. Now, if you're saying sewers versus Thatcher's 1984, that's a tougher choice.
So right, okay. So actual 1984 compared to sewers.
I'm staying in the sewers, baby.
Right.
At least Thatcher's dead in the sewers.
Last one, Star Trek.
Yeah.
So, like the Enterprise. Like, would you rather live in a Starfleet post-scarcity world or the sewers?
This isn't even a question. Obviously, Star Trek, deeply problematic. My favourite captain, Ben Sisko from Deep Space Nine, gasses a planet, making it uninhabitable, an entire planet, and is never reprimanded for it. So Star Trek is, in many ways, fucked.
But he did also write the Thong Song, so... You know, don't write him off straight away. Yeah.
I mean, I know. Yeah, I love Star Trek. The Starfleet stuff we see is very militaristic. It's utopian, but I think you can project different kinds of utopianism onto Star Trek, and I think it is possible, bizarrely, to project a right utopianism onto it as well. Yeah, I don't know. I really like Star Trek, but I also think to see it as it's like utopian escapism, but I think it can be a utopia for people who you don't necessarily agree with, which is the reason, like, something that is communist propaganda can't be as financially successful as Star Trek has been. So there's obviously other stuff going on there. And especially in the 60s, all the fucking sexism.
You know, like, I'm assuming in your sewer, like, not everybody, at least when they came down there, was, like, on the same area as you on the political compass, necessarily.
No.
You know, it's like, oh, shit, well, my options are Martians, or, like, the only thing
Listen,
that you...
Dodgy Paul the Weird guy is definitely a libertarian.
Right? The only thing that you can all agree on is, one, you like the Switch, which is not necessarily that discriminating a factor. And two, you'd rather live in a sewer than be captive to an alien, which also leaves you with some potentially unsavoury guests, as well as some alright folks. I mean, you're losing a lot of the eroticism, is what I'm saying, Jack.
Yeah, it's not as... Yeah, it's the sewer isn't as horny as Star Trek. Is that the downside? But one of the most interesting utopian sci-fi work, in my opinion, which is my favourite sci-fi book of all time, is Ursula Le Guin's The Dispossessed. Have you read this book? Yeah, it's really... I recommend it. I won't spoil anything for anyone, but I'll explain the gist of it as it would be on the back of the book or the top of the Wikipedia article, which is that you have a planet which is kind of... in an Earth-style Cold War between highly authoritarian socialism in the sort of Stalin vein on the one hand, and a capitalist side on the other. And then the anarchists, the peaceful sort of Peter Kropotkin type anarchists, live on the moon. And the moon is fucked. You know, there's nothing. It's quite, you know, there's not what. It's hard to farm on the moon. Yeah. It's hard. It's, you know, life on the moon is hard mode. A society lives there, an anarchist society, a society where there's no private property and everything is shared. It's really interesting because it goes through the challenges of living an anarchist life in that situation, and it's like ultra realistic. You know, like it's not Star Trek style utopianism where it's post scarcity and everything's sorted out. Yeah. It's like trying to create the kind of society that ethically I would believe in a situation, you know, a more challenging situation, which is weird because you think of utopian works as like, you know, being post scarcity, or there being a twist as well. That's the other thing about, you know, we talk about dystopias, but other works of utopia where it's like, oh, it seems to be all nice, and then there's like a horrible hidden secret, and it's actually all fucked, and everyone's drinking everyone else's blood. Like there isn't this twist secret and everything's fucked. It's just like really this really very well thought out exploration of anarchism on a moon, and it's really good. And that's my that's how I would try to model my sewer society.
But right, so would you, if you were offered the moon or sewers though, which would you go for? I
think our moon as it is now, definitely sewers, because I mean, for one thing, there's nowhere to charge your Switch on the moon.
What if it was like the Futurama moon panel with the theme park on it?
Yeah, I'd go there.
The tame ones will go like all tame beasts. In a few generations, they'll be big, beautiful, rich-blooded, stupid, rubbish. The risk is that we who keep wild will go savage, degenerate into a sort of big savage rat. You see, how I mean to live is underground. I've been thinking about the drains. Of course, those who don't know drains will think horrible things, but under this London are miles and miles, hundreds of miles, and a few days' rain and London empty will leave them sweet and clean. The main drains are big enough and airy enough for anyone. Then there's cellars, vaults, stores, from which bolting passages may be made to the drains, and the railway tunnels and subways. Hey, you begin to see, and we form a band. Able-bodied, clean-minded men. We're not going to pick up any rubbish that drifts in. Weaklings go out again.
I think it might be a good point now to notice that he's getting kind of eugenicsy, right? Like, able-bodied folk are the only ones that are allowed in here. They've got to have clean minds. Right? This is definitely H.G. Wells having a bit of a dig at eugenics and a lot of, I think, those big idealist thoughts that people have to try and stamp on their idea of society. Maybe this is a sly dig at that. I'd recommend you, if you want to hear more about the eugenics and H.G. Wells' relation with it, to go back and listen to the fantastic interviews with Subhadra Das and Simon Guerrier. They're sort of special one-off ones because we went in quite deep. But hasten to say, old Herbie G was no fan of eugenics, at least after he had a while to think about it. He definitely was not fond of the idea and dispelled it. And I think this is his way of getting a few digs in a way that his publisher could not say, "Are you kidding, Herbie? We're not popping this in here, mate. This is got to go out monthly." Because, of course, as we said, this chapter is a book only, once the story has proven itself to be a smash hit. Anyway, let's see where the artilleryman thinks all these guys should go poo if the drains are being used.
You meant me to go? Well, I parlayed, didn't I? We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
You mean you wouldn't have me in your clubhouse? Well, you asked to be in it, so I'd let you in. Yeah, mate. Yeah, you're all right by me. Don't worry. Oh yes, no, that checks out. Very good. Yes, thank you.
Those who stop obey orders. Able-bodied, clean-minded women we want also. Mothers and teachers. No lackadaisical ladies, no blasted rolling eyes. We can't have any weak or silly. Life is real again, and the useless and cumbersome and mischievous have to die. They ought to die. They ought to be willing to die. It's a sort of disloyalty, after all, to live and take the race. And they can't be happy. Moreover, dying's not so dreadful. It's the thanking makes it bad. And in all those places we shall gather. Our district would be London, and we may even be able to keep a watch and run about in the open when the Martians keep away. Play cricket, perhaps. That's how we shall save the race. Eh? It's a possible thing. But saving the race is nothing in itself. As I say, that's only being rats. It's saving our knowledge, and adding to it is the thing. There, men like you come in. There's books, there's models. We must make great safe places down deep and get all the books we can. Not novels and poetry swipes, but ideas. Science books. We must go to the British Museum and pick all those books through. Especially we must keep our science. Learn more.
I don't have a jingle for it, but isn't it wild that, like, you can see this thought process still happening now? You know, the sort of thought that the only academic things worthwhile are the sciences and those sort of ideas. Like, that sort of stuff that could be used for military purpose, the objective, this thought process. And also that you need people who are able-bodied. They're the only ones who could possibly contribute anything to life with their clear minds. Like, what? How old's this book? That's just over 120 years old, and there's still people who have this thought. And I'm sure 120 years before this was published, there were people with those thoughts. What's my point there? I don't know, does it sound profound? Does that sound like something? I don't know. When I started saying it, it felt like a real wry observation, but now that I have said it, and now that I continue to say it, I'm losing more and more confidence in it as we go.
We must watch these Martians. Some of us must go as spies. When it's all working, perhaps I will. Get caught, I mean. And the great thing is, we must leave the Martians alone. We mustn't even steal. If we get in their way, we clear out. We must show them we mean no harm. Yes, I know, but they're intelligent things, and they won't hunt us down if they have all they want and think we're just harmless vermin.
The artilleryman paused and lay a brown hand upon my arm. I think it's probably safe to assume that he means the artilleryman's brown hand, not just that the artilleryman has found a brown hand going anywhere. I'll go out on a limb and say that.
After all, it may not be so much that we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their fighting machines suddenly starting off. Heat rays left and right. Not a Martian in them, but men who have learnt the way how. It may be in my time. Even those men. Fancy having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. Fancy having it in control. What would it matter if you smashed to smithereens at the end of the run after a bust like that? I reckon the Martians will open their beautiful eyes. Can't you see them, man? Can't you see them hurrying, puffing and blowing and hooting to their other mechanical affairs? Something out of gear in every case, and swish, bang, rattle, swish. Just as they are fumbling over it, swish, comes the heat ray. And behold, man has come back to his own.
For a while, the imaginative daring of the artilleryman and the tone of assurance and courage he assumed completely dominated my mind. I believed unhesitatingly both in his forecast of human destiny and in the practicability of his astonishing scheme. And the reader who thinks me susceptible and foolish must contrast his position, reading steadily with all his thoughts about his subject, and mine, crouching fearfully in the bushes and listening, distracted by apprehension.
This isn't a book that's played for laughs by any stretch of the imagination, but that, you gotta admit, that's a pretty witty line there. He's getting a, I don't know if you can hear that. That's me tapping my glasses going, I get it. Yeah, that's a nice little trite observation there.
We talked in this manner through the early morning time, and later crept out of the bushes, and, after scanning the sky for Martians, hurried precipitately to the house on Putney Hill where he had made his lair. It was the coal cellar of the place, and when I saw the work he had spent a week upon, it was a burrow scarcely 10 yards long, which he designed to reach to the main drain on Putney Hill. I had my first inkling of the gulf between his dreams and his powers.
He reeled us in thinking that the artilleryman had a good plan, and woo! Wells is absolutely rinsing this lad that he created as a work of fiction to be used as a sort of straw man for an argument.
Such a hole I could have dug in a day. But I believed in him sufficiently to work with him all morning until past midday at his digging. We had a garden barrow and shot the earth we removed against the kitchen range. We refreshed ourselves with a tin of mock turtle soup and wine from the neighbouring pantry.
Hey, I just wanted to drop in, and I mean, we know wine, tick, obviously, but mock turtle soup? I'd heard of it, but I think I'd only heard of it because of Alice in Wonderland, and you know the mock turtle in that. Because of course, the only thing you can take away from this podcast is that I have locked myself into Victorian literature and nothing else. But mock turtle soup, it's like the name suggests, it's mock turtle soup. So in like the 1700s when it was created, green turtle soup was all the rage. Oh, couldn't move for it, but soon enough, demand outstripped supply, and they had to make an imitation soup. So they made the mock turtle, which apparently it's big in Cincinnati. So if there's anybody listening from Cincinnati and it's popular over there, why don't you let us know? I mean, generally English cooking has a pretty bad reputation for being gross, weird food, and you look at the mock turtle soup and you think, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, big tick there. This looks gross. Horrible. But the wine might be great.
I found a curious relief from the aching strangeness of the world in this steady labour. As we worked, I turned his project over in my mind, and presently objections and doubts began to arise. But I worked there all morning. So glad was I to find myself of purpose again. After working an hour, I began to speculate on the distance one had to go before the cloaca was reached.
Whoa, cloaca! That's a fun word to say, but what does it mean? Well, it's a type of sewer, as you might have guessed, a sort of entrance, but also, and this is potentially where the name comes from, it's a combination of a dick and bum hole for birds and reptiles. So the bit where the poo comes out, but also the knob might just go... Oh, gross. Horrible. Well, who am I to judge? I am but an explaining lad.
The chances we had of missing it altogether. My immediate trouble was why we should dig this long tunnel, when it was possible to get into the drain at once down one of the manholes and work back to the house. It seemed to me, too, that the house was inconveniently chosen and required a needless length of tunnel.
It soon began to dawn on me that I was dealing with a moron.
And just as I was beginning to face these things, the artilleryman stopped digging and looked at me.
We're working well.
he said. He put down his spade.
Let's knock off for a bit,
he said.
I think it's time we reconnoitred from the roof of the house.
Oh, God, I'm getting proper divorced dad trying his best at a birthday party vibes here, and it is, it's palpable, right? Can you feel that? Oh. I was for going on, and after a little hesitation, he resumed his spade. And then suddenly, I was struck by a thought. I stopped, and so did he at once.
Why were you walking about the common?
I said.
Instead of being here, taking the air,
he said.
I was coming back. It's safer by night. But the work. Oh, one can't always work,
he said, and in a flash I saw the man plain. He hesitated, holding his spade.
We ought to reconnoitre now,
he said,
because if any come near, they may hear the spades and drop upon us unawares.
I was no longer disposed to object. We went together to the roof and stood on a ladder peeping out of the roof door. No Martians were to be seen, and we ventured out onto the tiles and slipped down under the shelter of the parapet. From this position, a shrubbery hid the greater portion of Putney. But we could see a river below, a bubbly mass of red weed, and the low parts of Lambeth flooded and red. The red creeper swarmed up the trees about the old palace, and their branches stretched gaunt and dead, and set with shriveled leaves. From amid its clusters, it was strange how entirely dependent both these things were upon flowing water for their propagation. About us neither had gained a footing. Laburnums, pink maize, snowballs, and trees of arbor vitae rose out of the laurels and hydrangeas, green and brilliant into the sunlight. Beyond Kensington, dense smoke was rising, and that and a blue haze hid the northward hills. The artilleryman began to tell me of the sort of people who still remained in London.
One night last week,
he said,
some fools got the electric light in order, and there was all Regent Street and the circus ablaze, crowded with painted and ragged drunkards, men and women dancing and shouting till dawn. A man who was there told me. And as the day came, they became aware of a fighting machine standing nearby the Langham, looking down at them. Heaven knows how long it had been there. It must have given some of them quite a nasty turn. He came down the road towards them and picked up nearly 100 too drunk or frightened to run away.
Grotesque gleam of a time no history will ever fully describe. I mean, yeah, you hear about this all the time, don't you? Like in World War II in London, there were blitz parties. I certainly heard about stuff from my grandparents, one of them who grew up, she wasn't evacuated, and I mean, it wasn't like she wasn't going down to the circus and they had the lights on and she was dancing, because she's, about maybe 7 or 8, but definitely like this weird vibe that isn't captured during a war front is certainly true, and quite an interesting observation, and something that for a work of fiction is really accurate. What's my point here? There's not really a joke. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I think this is like the best chapter so far. I think HG being given the space to breathe and actually just make a single bit of narratives, paying dividends, which does feel slightly condescending. But then again, I have been dunking on him for about a whole podcast, so why quit now, right? Anyway, I'm having a good time. That's what I plan to say here. And also, I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but especially for UK listeners, there's a show called The In-Betweeners, and I'm getting proper Jay from The In-Betweeners vibe off of the artilleryman here. I don't know if anyone else is, but I feel like that'd be a strong casting there. From that, in answer to my questions, he came round to his grandiose plans again. He grew enthusiastic. He talked so eloquently of the possibility of capturing a fighting machine that I more than half believed in him again. But now that I was beginning to understand something of his quality, I could not divine the stress he laid on doing nothing precipitately, and I noted now there was no question that he personally was to capture and fight this great machine. Hey, this guy's a dreamer! There's nothing wrong with that, he's got a dream! To kill! After a time, we went down to the cellar. Neither of us seemed disposed to resume digging, and when he suggested a meal, I was nothing loath. He became suddenly very generous, and when we had eaten, he went away and returned with some excellent cigars. We lit these, and his optimism glowed. He was inclined to regard my coming as a great occasion.
There's some champagne in the cellar, he said. We can dig better on this Thameside Burgundy,
said I.
No,
he said.
I'm host today. Champagne! Great God, we've a heavy enough task before us. Let's take rest and gather strength while we may. Look at these blistered hands. And pursuant to this idea of a holiday, he insisted upon playing cards after we had eaten. He taught me euchre.
Narrator, let him have a day off. He's only done about 10 foot anyway. What's this going to do? Let him have a little break, have a little bit of time with him. It'll add to your journal you're working on. What are you, scared that Martians are going to find you and kill you before you dig to safety? Actually, no, I've said it out loud. That seems kind of fair.
And after dividing London between us, I taking the north side and he the southern, we played for parish points. Grotesque and foolish as this will seem to the sober reader, it is absolutely true. And what is more remarkable, I found the card game and several others we played extremely interesting.
Not only did I play games, but I liked them. So shove that in your reader's pipe and smoke it.
Mate, nobody's saying you can't enjoy the game. That's fine.
Well, I did. So there.
Alright.
Strange mind of man. That, with our species upon the edge of extermination or appalling degradation, with no clear prospect before us but the chance of a horrible death, we could sit following the chance of this painted pasteboard, and playing the Joker with vivid delight.
Now, before you even think it, no, they're not just sat there, dressed in clown makeup like Joaquin Phoenix, watching the weird Todd Phillips film that somehow seems to have cultural cachet. No, they're playing a board game. Behave. Could you imagine? Although it makes about as much sense, doesn't it? The end of the world is knocking on your door. So what do? You clown up. Clown up, mate. That's their Joker origin story, to quote Twitter in a way that makes me feel sick.
Afterwards, he taught me poker, and I beat him at 3 tough chess games. When dark came, we decided to take the risk, and lit a lamp. After an interminable string of games, we supped, and the artilleryman finished the champagne. We went on smoking the cigars. He was no longer the energetic regenerator of his species I had encountered in the morning. He was still optimistic, but it was a less kinetic, a more thoughtful optimism. I remember he wound up with my health, proposed in a speech of small variety and considerable intermittence. I took a cigar, and went upstairs to look at the lights of which he had spoken that blazed so greenly along the Highgate hills.
So, obviously, the artilleryman is drunk, he's made some speeches, he's made a toast to the narrator. I love that of all the speeches he's heard today, the one that he switches off at is just some nice words about him, just proposing to his health, like, oh God, he's got to say something nice about me. Well, that is the last straw. I'm going upstairs to look at some lights.
At first, I stared unintelligently across the London Valley. The northern hills were shrouded in darkness. The fires near Kensington glowed redly, and now and then an orange-red tongue of flame flashed up and vanished in the deep blue night. All the rest of London was black. Then, nearer, I perceived a strange light, a pale, violet-purple fluorescent glow, quivering under the night breeze. For a space I could not understand it, and then I knew that it must be the red weed from which this faint irradiation proceeded. With that realization, my dormant sense of wonder, my sense of proportion of things, awoke again. I glanced from that to Mars, red and clear, glowing high in the west, and then gazed long and earnestly at the darkness of Hampstead and Highgate. I remained a very long time upon the roof, wondering at the grotesque changes of the day. I recalled my mental states from the midnight prayer to the foolish card-playing. I had a violent revulsion of feeling. I remember I flung away the cigar with a certain wasteful symbolism.
Yeah, that'll make you feel less guilty. A symbolic cigar flick, won't it? That'll sort you right out. It's interesting, isn't it, that, I feel like if you were reading this nowadays, as we are, you sort of see that this is obviously like a little break he needs, like a section of normality, a bit of civilization to experience, to remind himself that he is a human and he is of the human race and life is still going on. But obviously in this he's just using it to beat himself up and feel like he should be doing more, which I don't know if that's just H.G. Wells working through something or if that's sort of an attitude of the book at the time, but it's something. Let's hold on, let me get my sheet of paper. We'll mark this up as not quite a joke, but sort of insightful. Yeah, pop that there. Ick. It's a lot of them.
My folly came to me with glaring exaggeration. I seemed a traitor to my wife and to my kind. I was filled with remorse.
I resolved to leave this strange, undisciplined dreamer of great things to his drink and gluttony, and go on into London. There, it seemed to me, I had the best chance of learning what the Martians and my fellow men were doing. I was still upon the roof when the late moon rose.
So there you have it, guys. I mean, what a hell of a boy. So much happens. Do you think you'd go live underground with him? I don't know. So many ideas compared to the actual physical execution. It feels very much like a preview for a comedy show. And whilst we're talking about previews for a comedy show, why not come down and see some of mine? So I've got, like I said before, 16th of April in London at the Museum of Comedy. Come along to that. It'd be great to have you there. I'm also in Buxton at some point in July. I'm in Manchester on the 28th of July with Blizzard Comedy. I'm in Brighton on the 4th to the 6th of June at the Electric Arcade. And I'm also at the Edinburgh Fringe later on in the year too, which is the 16th to the 24th of August at the Mash House with Just a Tonic. Please do like, subscribe, rate this podcast, and follow me at Edy Hurst on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for Chapter 8, where I've invited the comedy collective Chunks to come along, a few of the guys from that, and join me in reading through it, a bit like how we did with Delightful Sausage. So I will see you in a couple of weeks for Chapter 8, which is Dead London. Thanks very much, guys. See you soon. Bye!